Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today we have a visionary writer and director that I'd like to introduce you to. He has a very special project. His name is Adad Joel Warda. And before we begin the interview with him today, I would like to show you a little taste of his vision. It's quite extraordinary. We're going to be talking about it today. It's called Unwritten. And let's take a look at that first.
I'm Adad Joel Warda, the co-writer and director of Unwritten, a mind-bending psychological horror film about creativity gone mad. Combining psychological tension, supernatural terror, and emotional depth, Unwritten delivers a movie experience as thought-provoking as it is terrifying. When Alex, a disgraced screenwriter, now teaching screenwriting, faces a strained marriage and career decline, but his vivid imagination takes on a life of its own. The characters from his films mysteriously come to life, blurring the lines between fiction and reality. This sends him on a feverish quest to stop these nightmares and save his strained marriage before insanity consumes him. With the tagline, "Madness has a mind of its own," Unwritten is a mind-bending trip that keeps audiences guessing until the very last second. Led by our incredibly talented production team, I've been in the trenches with now over several ambitious projects, from our social impact short film, The Hard R, to our time-traveling cinematic Super Bowl-style Excel commercial, to now on the mind-bending feature, Unwritten. For my co-writer, Levi Gordon, whose talent in screenwriting, collaborative spirit, and can-do attitude make him an incredible partner in crime. To Jamie Olsen, our triple threat producer, whose resourcefulness, fearlessness, and hands-on approach make her a powerhouse who gets things done on time and on budget. To Marissa Vaughn, our assistant director, who wrangles the cast, crew, and talent over long days and a grueling shooting schedule with professionalism, kindness, and without even breaking a sweat. To Isaiah Flores, our director of photography, who's a maven with composition and light, and who wields his camera like a sniper with his rifle, setting his sights on our vision and boom. To Cesar Reyes, our visionary production designer, who leaves no stone unturned by finding, building, and creating the imaginative world of the film.
I don't produce a project unless I would want to see the film. So let's just start there. The film is well positioned because it's a genre film. So it's a psychological horror and it's a very unique story. We're doing something different here. And I really feel that audiences are going to be extremely excited to watch our film.
Making horror films and making psychological thrillers can be intimidating. The timing has to be right, the makeup has to be right, the practical effects, the special effects, everything has to be right for the movie to really sell. I'm so excited that we get to tell this story with this amazing crew because I know we're going to nail it.
As a cinematographer, I'm a huge fan of psychological thrillers, and getting into this character, getting into his mind is really important. I see a lot of contrast and a lot of play with light and shadow.
Over the years, I was able to build a team of very talented set dressers, prop master, art directors. And I believe that together we can build the vision for this film. The dark horror, the texture that we need to build the different sets. And I believe that having the right tool will make this a wonderful film.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg, with so many more dedicated and talented individuals that help us execute this vision. Our team will employ clever practical effects, strategic locations, and a dynamic shooting style to achieve a polished thriller rivaling studio films. The upside is exponential. Recent micro-budget horror films demonstrate that there's a huge appetite for the genre when done well.
I'm looking forward to build these sets, to create this mood and tell a story.
You are what you believe in us.
If you're willing to take this journey with us, we'd love to have you.
We're ready to do something different and we're ready to scare the shit out of you.
Join us on this dark and imaginative journey. With passion and ingenuity, we'll turn a modest budget into box office success.
Okay, so there was Adad's reel. That was fantastic. And Adad, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Barb. I really appreciate you inviting me on. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Now, Adad is a commercial director who's been getting into the feature film end of the business. He's done a short. And he's a writer director, and he also wrote the current script we're going to talk about today called Unwritten with a writing partner. So, Adad, first of all, tell us about your background. How did you get into doing commercials and then deciding to go more into feature films?
Sure. Well, firstly, just I want to say thank you for inviting me on. I very much appreciate the lovely coverage you helped me with. You really helped to improve our script by leaps and bounds. So I just wanted to, offer that a little bit of gratitude. I was a creative person since I was a small child, and I loved anything and everything visual. And that slowly evolved into a love for light, sound, composition, and eventually a love for storytelling. And I was always an artist, drawing, imagining. And my cousins had a camera. We used to make home videos, and gradually I started to make my own home videos. Of course, I cajoled and bribed my parents to get me, computer editing stations or cameras, whatever I could get my hands on, and they were kind enough to support me. And I just made, I don't know, a million films as a kid, from middle school to high school to college. You couldn't stop me, and when everyone else was out having fun and I was just, working on my stuff, copying other movies, making my own films, everything.
Mhm.
And eventually I decided to study film at San Francisco State University, and they have a wonderful film studies program. It's a little different than film schools in LA, where I think schools like UCLA, USC, Chapman are a lot more focused on production. And it makes sense because they're right in the LA area. People can go intern beyond productions, and that's what everyone wants. Everyone wants to make films. San Francisco State is a lot more focused on the history of film, the psychological, sociological studies of film, third world cinema, and my palette of what I loved really expanded, tenfold when I was there. I saw films that I had never heard of. I fell in love with film noirs, with a lot of third world cinema, and up until that point, I think I had mostly seen what was big and popular and promoted. So my tastes, my understanding, my appreciation of the art form really grew exponentially. And I had never had any issue jumping into production myself. I didn't need school for that. So the complementary sides of like me just practicing and honing my skills, but then expanding what I knew film could be, uh, uh, just opened my eyes. Um, and then when I graduated in 2005, I decided to get into commercial video production because I felt that was the closest place to dramatic filmmaking, which was my dream I could get to, and still make a living at it. And I got into that, and I did that for 3 years in the San Francisco area, and then got an invitation from a friend of mine I studied film with in Prague, and proceeded to move out to Europe, based out of Prague, and travel the world for 12 years, doing hotel videos, commercials, corporate videos, just anything I could get my hands on. And that eventually led to 12 years of expanding my understanding of the world, myself in it. And it was the first time that my actual lived experiences became greater than my imagination, because my imagination couldn't fathom another country, another culture, and just traveling to different places every month. And now that COVID happened a few years ago and I moved back home, and I've had a lot of time to digest and think about all that, and realize my one true love has always been dramatic filmmaking. I'm taking all of those experiences, all of that appreciation, all of that desire, and all of those dreams, and focusing it into Unwritten and the future.
Now, tell me for your screenwriting. Now, I know you have a partner on Written, but do you have a process for your screenplays, or do you just do you outline? Do you dive into it? Do you actually just think of it more in camera angles? I know you're a writer director. What is your process?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. The process is to, at first, divorce the actual on-set experience of directing a film, storyboarding, and all that. Throw that out the window. Treat it like you're writing a novel. And I first start with a lot of research. A part of me wants to jump in and write, but I never give myself the permission to, because I want to feel like I've done enough research and I've reached that critical mass where I can start writing somewhat spontaneously, because I want to write from a place of authenticity. And that means sort of writing the way you would be experiencing, not to analytically stitch things together. That comes later, but to just write from the gut. But you have to accumulate enough knowledge on the subject and the characters and the story you're telling so that you can write from the gut. And Um, I've been watching a lot of the YouTube channel Film Courage because they have a lot of screenwriters that come on talk about their process, which is amazing.
Mhm.
One of the interviews, and I don't remember who it was, the individual talked about how there are intuitive screenwriters or writers in general and conceptual writers. Conceptual is you have this idea, this concept, and you love it, and then you start to try to find a story out of that. And an intuitive writer is you got this character, this predicament, and you just start writing what they're doing and what's happening with them. And he said there's a small number of people who kind of jump back and forth in between. And there's no advantage or disadvantage to either one. It's just that's where people fall. And I found that I start out conceptual, like I have this idea, like I did for Unwritten, where, hey, what if a screenwriter had to face his actual characters come to life to confront him over what he had written? And what if it was bad? And he had to reckon with that. And so that was the first idea. But then at some point, after doing enough research, I want to start discovering what's going to happen to the characters along the way through actually writing it. So I find I have to jump back and forth between the big picture and then, well, what's actually going to happen? And I think the hardest thing for me is translating that concept into something that feels like it's lived in, that's not spoon feeding, and it has that right balance. And in the case of Unwritten, I needed to work with a screenwriting partner who had a complementary skill set to my own, which is somebody who looks for how to ground everything, how to stitch things together, find connections, and just make it work. Because my mind tends to jump off into every tangent and think outside the box. That would be cool. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's and it just rapid fires. And he's like, okay, let's compress it and focus. Okay, good.
And I like what you
Yeah.
said about how the putting it together, because that gives it that authentic voice. If you've really done that research and you don't give yourself that permission to just jump right in, you give yourself that time to really become acquainted with it. And that stands out when you're reading something as a coverage person. You can tell if someone's really taken the time with it. You can hear the voice in there. You can hear the authenticity, and it's worth taking that extra time. I know we all have that passionate feel. We want to sit down. We want to maybe just hammer out a synopsis or something and then put it in a drawer and go do the research. Take the time with it.
Right.
And then when you come
Right.
back, you might look at it and say, oh, what was I doing here? So, because it always speaks when you get it out there. And of course, you want to get it for coverage first instead of taking it right to the producer, because you want him to hear that authentic voice, the voice that got you excited about it in the first place. I want to talk to you about Unwritten. So I'll tell
Okay.
you this project, when I first read it, I gave it a pass. And I'll tell you, every writer I've ever met and ever did anything for in this business has a story, whether it's a screenplay, whether it's a novel, whether it's a TV series, about a writer. We all do. In fact, I think I have one, I'm pretty sure, in a drawer here somewhere in my office. Everyone has it. They're a dime a dozen. Sometimes producers can get kind of about looking at them. They've been made into movies before. It's rare. So that was the first thing. I read it and I'm like, oh, not another one of these. But then as I got into it, I was hearing that authentic voice that we just talked about. And I gave it a pass for reasons that were more technical related than the voice and the vision related. And then when Adad asked me to do a call, we did a Zoom call, and to brainstorm it, I said, now here's somebody that really has that voice, and he not only wants to make it great for his vision, but also for the audience. And I think that's somewhere where a lot of writers don't connect with, yes, you're writing for yourself and your passion, your vision, but you need to make that connection with the audience, which is what I felt Adad was doing. And he is brilliant at brainstorming. I think you could write an entire book on that. And after that session, he came back with the script again, and it got a recommend. And I'll tell you, that's rare in this business to go from a pass to a recommend. So Adad, will you please tell us about Unwritten? Give us some more details. This is a story about a screenwriter, but there's a lot more to it. It is a psychological thriller, like a horror, and it is really something that I think will shock the audience. So tell us about your project.
Well, if I can kind of preface it by saying I really appreciated your very kind of, I would call, precision approach to coverage. You have this very sharp science down that helps you understand the weak points, the strong points. And what my favorite part of it was, it wasn't just about attacking what doesn't work, but also about building on what does. And that helped me incredibly. My co-writer and I focus on what we needed to do on both ends, and it really accelerated our process. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Unwritten is about two opposing concepts, which, funny enough, I learned about after well into the process of writing this screenplay. And it was uncanny at how these two concepts lined up perfectly with the film just by chance. Very bizarre. And they are the Michelangelo phenomenon and the golem effect. The Michelangelo phenomenon is when you are connected with people that you work with, you're friends with, or often, times they mention it through the lens of romantic lovers, where like Michelangelo carving sculptures out of stone and marble to find the refined final shape, structure, and piece, the truth of, the art, you and your partner sculpt each other through your positive effect on each other towards your perfect selves, your ideal self.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on the other hand, if you're with the wrong person, you end up bringing out the worst in each other, almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's called the golem effect. And yet, we had not come across these two concepts until well into the process, even though our film was about a woman who is writing a play about her strained marriage through creating maquettes, which are clay figures that you mold and carve and shape to help her tell the story. And at the same time, one of the mythical monsters in the story that is haunting our protagonist is a monster that is called the Golem, which is a mythical monster from Czech folklore. I lived in Prague, the Czech Republic, and so of course I brought experiences from that, those 12 years. The Golem is part of the demons that the writer is facing. Basically, he wrote stories about characters who face mythical monsters, and then they end up finding out that these mythical monsters were not supernatural, but they are someone who is committing a crime of passion, and they're using a mythical monster as a disguise, both as a costume, but also as a mystique, kind of like Batman uses his suit to hide his identity. So people that he loves will not be in harm's way. They won't be threatened. The very characters that are coming to life that he's written are reappropriating these monster figures to haunt him about some of his, let's say, writing sins and his misdeeds. So it was really interesting how carving towards the perfect kind of self through understanding, the strained relationship through, clay figures, and then a golem as one of the mythical monsters just kind of sort of fell into place. And we realized this is wonderful, and we added that thematic overview into our deck. So it's really about can your story help deliver you to a happy life, or better put, you are what you create. So if what you create is commercial yet vapid, whereas if it's something that is resonant and coming from a true place, and if we take that idea of storytelling and we turn it onto ourselves, all of us has an internal narrative about who we are, what we're capable of, what we deserve, where we're going. And if already in our mind we believe that we can only do so much, it's like the glass is half empty, we won't even try. So your own self-narrative has the ability to deliver you or imprison you. The question is which road are you going to take?
Plays into the popular manifestation today, right? That people are trying to manifest whatever they want in their lives, and it plays into that as well as having very universal and very common themes as well. So now you are writing, directing the project, and as we saw from the beginning, we saw that your sizzle reel there. And so right now you're in the funding stages of the project. Tell us where you're at and tell us some more about that. Where are you at with that, and what are you looking for to get the project done?
Sure, that's a wonderful question. Thank you. We are in the process of fundraising. We have, I think about 1/10 of our budget. Our budget that we're looking at is around $1 million. We have some people in the industry that are waiting to read the script. We were, of course, holding off on sending it until we got coverage because we wanted to make sure it was tip top. Execution is key, not just the idea. Everyone knows that. So, and when you're in a position that we are, where you're not a known entity, you don't have a brand, you don't have a name, you don't have representation, you have to make sure what you're delivering is the very best. Once we get the funds in, we're going to continue with casting and location scouting. And we would love to, in an ideal world, go into production this year, 2024. We'll see what happens, but we know we probably want to shoot it in and around the LA area because there's a lot of resources. My entire production team is located there. And I think that given that it's about a screenwriting teacher, it would make sense to shoot at one of the universities in the LA area that teaches screenwriting and film. Just for a lot of obvious reasons. So that's what we're looking to do. So yeah, we're looking to connect with financiers, investors, producers, and anyone else who believes in this journey, wants to be a part of it, and help make it a reality.
And it has a wonderful budget. I mean, it's low budget, obviously. And I love the idea of it being filmed in 2024 because if you're looking at the summer months, the schools, universities are closed. You have access to all of those facilities to film, easier to
Mhm.
get permits during those periods of time, etc. So I think it's got some good possibilities there. So anybody out there interested in doing that, you cannot miss this. This is a visionary writer director who I think one day we are going to see at the Oscars. That's my prediction. And I rarely say things like this. He has a vision that has a voice that speaks to your soul. It really does. So don't miss a Dodd's
Yeah.
project. Request his screenplay. I think you are going to be pleasantly surprised, a little horrified, but that's called entertainment. So, is there anything you'd like to say in closing, Adad?
So I just want to say, I wouldn't have been able to write this script without my amazingly talented co-writer, Levi Gordon, who I connected with on a short film that he started writing that we ended up co-writing together, and I directed and he helped produce. And we created a great working relationship, and we decided to partner on this one as well. And I found collaborating with the right people is one of the smartest things you could do. So I just want to give a shout out to him. I wouldn't be here without him.
Now, is that the collaboration you did with him? Is that for the hard R that we saw in the sizzle reel? Is that the short?
Correct.
That was the short. Okay,
Yes.
great. And
Yeah.
that looked pretty exciting there as well. So, okay, Adad, I
Thank you.
appreciate your time today. I thank you very much, and I wish you the very best with your project.
Thank you, Barb. I really appreciate everything you've done too. Thank you so much.